And it kind of blew my mind that within the space of a couple of weeks, I could go from having like a 1 minute 30 breath hold to like 6.5 minutes just through some training. And from there, I then went into meditation teacher training and kind of discovering how simple breathing practices could just calm down like the monkeys in my mind and allow meditation to happen much more easily. And then, as Conni mentioned, we did this transformational breathing training program last year, and the breath has just really changed my life in so many ways. So we're both kind of breath obsessed, and really excited to share some of this wisdom with you. So yeah, that's me.
All right, wonderful. So what's going to happen today is we're going to do a little breath test, and then we're going to get in touch with our breath a little bit. We're going to do a couple of breath practices. Then we're going to share a bit about the science around the breath and breathing and breath work and all the things and all the different kinds of breath work and how we can use the breath to shift our state and heal ourselves. And then we're going to do a couple more breathing practices towards the end. So we do want to get you all to breathe as much as possible today, because that's what really, I don't know, I feel like you need to have the experience. You can't just talk about the breath and breath work. Hence, why this is hopefully a very practical sort of workshop for you all. All right, shall we get started, Jonny, with the breath test? Just need to
let's go for it. If you guys could mute, awesome. Yeah, let's go, Conni. Do you want to lead them through?
Sweet.
I'll be on mute, Judy.
Share. I need to share my screen. So, one second. How do I? Oh, here, portion of the screen. It's always a bit of a gamble here with Zoom. All right, I think I'm screen sharing now. Is that correct? Can everybody see my screen? Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. So this is what we're gonna do. First off, we're gonna do a little CO2 tolerance test, and you don't need to know what this is for quite yet. You'll find out, but we're gonna do the test now, and you're gonna write down the number at the end, and you'll find out what this means and why this is important, and how breathwork can help you to increase your CO2 tolerance, and why CO2 is important in the first place. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. Have a timer ready. Probably your phone is your best bet. Usually every phone has a timer. If you are using Zoom right now on your phone, you can just leave Zoom and still stay connected with us, but just use your timer function, or the stopwatch, actually, I think is what it's called here on the iPhone. Stopwatch, yeah, that's it. And what we're gonna do is you're just gonna relax. So wherever you're sitting, you can keep your eyes open, and we're just gonna relax and sit back, and you're just super chill, and you're just gonna take 3 normal breaths in and out. So this is not about controlling the breath in any way. It's just sitting here, taking a breath in and out, and another one in and out. And then after your third exhale, you hold your breath and you close your nose tightly and you start your timer. Okay, I'm still explaining. You don't have to start doing this yet. So after your last exhale, you close your nose tightly, right? And you start your timer. And then you hold your breath until you feel the first sensation of needing to breathe. Okay? Now, this is not a competition. To all the type A people and overachievers, this is not about a competition. This is not about how long you can hold your breath at all. This is not what this is about. We're not doing Wim Hof or anything. This is really just about when you feel the first sensation of breath hunger, and this might be a sensation, it could be in your throat, it could be around your diaphragm, in your belly area. But the first sensation that you feel, that's when you check your stopwatch and you press stop, because this will give you a number that I will share with you later on what this means and where you're at on the scale of CO2 tolerance. So if your diaphragm fires or twitches, or you need to take a really long breath in after the breath hold, then you've gone way too far, okay? And then you just do it again. And you can totally do this 2 or 3 times if you want to, just to kind of make sure where you're at. Yeah, so let's do this now. As I said, just take 3 normal breaths in and out, totally normal breaths. And then after your last exhale, you close your nose tightly, you start the timer. And then you hold your breath until you feel the first sensation of needing to breathe. So cheating doesn't help, because you want to have a realistic result here. And whenever you feel that first little sensation of air hunger, you check your stopwatch and see where you're at. And then at best, you write that number down. How many seconds did you manage to hold your breath until you felt that first sensation of air hunger? And as I said, you can, the important thing is, if you do this again later or tomorrow or something, at best you can check this once a week or so, or a couple of times a week, is that you, the best time to do this is right after you wake up in the morning when you're still in bed, right? The second best time to do this is during the day and when you've been sitting for at least 5 minutes, okay? You wanna be in a resting heart rate sort of situation, okay? All right, and we're gonna talk about what all of this means in just a little bit, so hang tight, but it's pretty cool. Alrighty, Jonny, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Conni. So we're just gonna do a brief breath awareness practice. And you don't really have to do anything for this. But I'd like to invite you to close down your eyes and take a moment to just sit up comfortably, maybe like a straight lower spine. And just bring your awareness to your breath without changing anything at all. You're just inquiring, how am I breathing right now? And just paying attention to the rhythm of your breath. And you might notice if you're breathing through your mouth or through your nose. And you can put your right hand on your belly and just sense if your breath is going more into your chest and rib cage, or is it going down into your belly? And again, without trying to change it at all, just paying attention to what's there. And maybe feel how fast or slow your breath is. Is there a natural pause after your exhalation, even if it's really short? Do you feel like it's easier to inhale or to exhale? Does one of them come more easily than the other? And finally, just feel into the texture of your breath. So is it smooth and even? Or is it maybe slightly rough and disjointed? Is there some kind of constriction there? And just really building up this picture, like you're kind of mapping the territory of your breath. And becoming intimate with it. Okay, now if you'd like to open up your eyes again and come back into the Zoom room, I'd love to hear in the chat box what you guys noticed. Like, what were some of your reflections from just paying attention to your breath? Is there anything that you noticed that you weren't aware of previously, or maybe you're holding your breath at times? Just share whatever you noticed in the chat room.
Inhaling was easier than exhaling. I didn't realize that I had a big pause between inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling was a bit more effortful than exhaling. The more I paid attention to the breath, the more I lost awareness of the wider space, which caused a compression in me. Interesting. Inhaling was much more easier for me. Interesting. Nose, tummy, inhaling easier than exhaling. My breath is more up in the chest than down the belly. Connection with hand to belly really helped me bring my energy down and ground it. The inhale came in 2 parts, so did the exhale. Interesting. Short and shallow breath, easier to exhale. Longer exhaling. Interesting. Inhaling easier. Exhale easier. You see how this is different for everybody? Deeper inhale in the abdomen, but felt rough in the chest. Breathing in and out of my nose, very short breaths. Wow, really cool stuff. Quite short and shallow breath, more into the chest. Awesome. Alrighty. So this is the first step when it comes to breath work, is to get acquainted with our breath and to to really feel what it's like to breathe. I remember when I first got acquainted with my breath, I think it was in 2012, when I started meditating and doing yoga, and the teacher was like, you know, become aware of your breath and all the things. And I was like, oh wow, I have a breath. I didn't even realize up until that point that I had a breath. I was never, we just take it for granted, right? It's just something that a lot of us don't even think about twice until we start meditating or we start doing yoga or maybe Tai Chi, Qigong or whatever. And that's quite fascinating, I find. All right. Now, before we get into our little science talk around breath work, I would like us to ground down just a little bit more because we spend so much time in our brains and staring at our laptops, and our breath is just a beautiful, beautiful sort of bridge between the mind and the body, and it helps us to ground down, to drop into our bodies. And so we're gonna do a bit of diaphragmatic breathing combined with coherence breathing. You might have heard of coherence breathing before, but I'll explain it to you as we go along. And so I invite you to take a comfortable seat. It'll take probably, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes or so. I'm gonna turn on the music a bit. Alrighty. Alright, take a comfortable seat and close your eyes. Finding stillness. And if you like, you can put one hand on your belly. Just focus your breath right there. Breathing in, as your belly rises. Breathing out, your belly falls. Breathing in, your belly rises. Breathing out, your belly falls. It's what's called diaphragmatic breathing. We're breathing in and out through the nose. Just taking a few more of those breaths low into our bellies. Now we're going to shift into a 4x4 balanced coherence breathing pattern, which means we inhale through our nose for 4, and we exhale through our nose for 4. And as you breathe in, your belly rises, and as you breathe out, your belly falls. So you inhale through your nose for 1, 2, 3, 4, your belly rises. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1, your belly falls. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, belly rises. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1, belly falls. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last round. Inhale, belly rises. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, belly falls. 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming back to a normal breath now. Relax. Just noticing any shift, any sensation in your body. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back. And if you like, share in the chat box anything that you observed. The mind became quieter, calming, very relaxing. Relaxing, heart rate slowed down. Calmer, still mind. Wonderful. Just gonna... Jonny, I have a message here in Zoom that says we're gonna get kicked out.
Yeah, so yeah, I've just been upgrading our Zoom account. I did this yesterday. I think because we have 2 hosts, it's trying to kick us out. Can we try and do a real-time Zoom surgery? I'm going to share another link in here, and if we can get all 96 people to join this other Zoom room.
Okay, so much just for having to improvise.
I've been trying everything behind the scenes. Yeah, if it's definitely increased the speed of my breathing in the last 5 minutes watching the countdown.
We had too many signups and we had to upgrade our Zoom account, and so I think this is what's happening. So just click on the link, friends, and we'll see you just next door.
I'm gonna leave this one and we'll see you next door. See you in 2 secs.
Yes, Joanna, great real-time example of how this work applies to life experience. Absolutely. Because here's what we can do, right? So a stressful event happens, and the breath can help us to shift our nervous system from being stressed out, feeling anxious, and, I mean, what else was Jonny feeling just now for 5 minutes? Because I saw the clock ticking. I was like, huh, that's weird. I wonder why Zoom wants to kick us out. And I could see him kind of doing things. But I was focusing on our coherence breathing, and coherence breathing is beautiful because it balances our nervous system. Now, what Jonny can do is, after a stressful moment like that, is he can extend his out breath. So for example, he can inhale for 4, exhale for 8. And by exhaling longer than we inhale, we actually activate our parasympathetic part of our nervous system, and that has a relaxing effect. So I remember, this was maybe a couple of years ago now, I was going on a date in Berlin. And I'm lying, this was maybe a year and a half or so ago. Yes, sometime last year. Anyway, and I was really, really nervous. And I was walking to this date, and we're gonna meet on this bridge. And I was really nervous because I'm an anxious dater, and I used to be, not anymore though. And I was really nervous. And then I was like, I'm just gonna do some 4-8 breathing. Perfect. So the whole way there, I was walking for like 20 minutes. I was inhaling for 4, exhaling for 8. By the time I got there, I was chill. And it didn't work out, that whole dating situation. But it was just an awesome example of where I would apply these sort of breathing techniques, because it really worked. What doesn't work is telling myself, "Oh, just chill out, Conni, just relax, just relax. Why are you so nervous?" But what does really help is getting down to the level of our bodies, using our breath. And so yeah, that's just an example. Jonny, are you ready to dive
amazing.
into the science, or do you want me to just
No, I will
and share just some vulnerable stories?
No, it's a pretty good segue to what I was going to talk about anyway. If you can be on waiting room duty, there's still some people. I just shared the new link to people through email. Mm-hmm. So I'm also going to have to turn off your lovely music as well. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Thumbs up if you can. Yep. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to make the case that how we breathe directly influences how we think in a really powerful way. Does anyone here want to guess what these 3 circles and numbers might represent? Just write in the chat, whatever comes to mind. 960, 23,000, 161,000. What do you think they might stand for? How many breaths per day, week, year? Close. Yeah, pretty close. So something in the brain. So they are essentially the average number of breaths that we take per hour, per day, and per week. So it's a hell of a lot. And let's say that this line here represents our conscious awareness versus our subconscious awareness. This line is also known as the critical faculty. So most of the time you're unaware of everything that happens below the line. That might be your heart beating, all those kind of things that happen on their own. So thinking back to the breath awareness exercise we just did, how are you breathing kind of without being conscious of it? And I think that for most of us, in reality, even Conni and I, we rarely tune into how our breath is moment by moment or consciously try and shift it. So even this ratio here is probably generous for most of us. So why does this matter? Well, it matters because a lot of us, especially if we're spending large portions of the day in front of screens, doing work, we tend to have really unhealthy breathing patterns. And there's even a phenomenon that was labeled as email apnea, which basically refers to this observed fact that a lot of us hold our breath while we're responding to email. And I'm sure the same applies to lots of other computer activities. So let's say for the purpose of feeling this and experiencing this for the next few minutes, I'd like you to deliberately breathe faster than usual and through your mouth and into your upper chest while I'm going through the next few slides. Kind of how I was breathing a few minutes ago while I tried to perform Zoom surgery. So just so that you can feel what I'm trying to explain with the neuroscience. But don't overdo it. I don't want anyone passing out. So the reason that this matters is there is a tiny cluster of neurons that's deep in our brainstem that is kind of spying on the way that we're breathing. And it uses this data to then send signals to our nervous system via what's known as the vagus nerve. And so let's say that your subconscious, your regular breathing pattern is through the mouth, it's into your upper chest, it has it's fairly shallow without any pauses. This will send signals to activate the sympathetic part of your nervous system, which, as some of you probably know, it's associated with intense activity and fight or flight. And this then in turn creates a cascading effect which sends signals to your endocrine system, which creates measurable changes in blood chemistry. And as you can imagine, these changes in your blood chemistry pretty rapidly make their way back to your brain, and they directly impact the emotions that you're feeling and the thoughts that you're having, which is really fascinating. Okay, you can let your breath return to normal if you're still breathing intensely. And then this is where we kind of really get into trouble, is sometimes those kind of challenging emotions and thoughts and feelings will then reinforce or even exacerbate that breathing pattern, which is generating the sympathetic response. And it creates this kind of vicious cycle. And burnout, which I've been researching a lot recently, is it kind of arises when we spend too long operating in this high tone sympathetic state. And it's common to literally get adrenal fatigue from being in the state the whole time. So the big question is, if this is happening through the kind of automatic nervous system, what can we do about it? There's a couple of things, and the meditation challenge that Conni and I did last year was kind of geared towards helping us develop this equanimity, which essentially creates a pause between the stimulus and response, and it basically creates like psychological space between those thoughts and feelings, and then reinforcing the response. But this is definitely possible, and a lot of people can do it, but it's not easy, especially when something is majorly triggering. It's really hard to kind of calm down the monkeys that are spinning. Okay, so this is a visualization of the vagus nerve that I just mentioned. Vagus means wanderer. It's thicker than the spinal cord, and it wanders throughout the entire body. And we're still honestly in the early stages of learning about exactly what this nerve does, but we do know that most of everything that we feel, and certainly all emotions, originate in this nerve. And a lot of you, I also wanted to mention, you've probably heard of neuroplasticity with regards to learning, this idea that the brain is like a muscle, and that we can build up these newer pathways. But it also applies to our entire nervous system. So it applies to all through the vagus nerve, and that our breathing patterns and the corresponding stress responses get hardwired unless we decide to consciously rewire them and change them, which is what we're kind of guiding you through. So one more quick question. Does anyone know roughly what percentage of your body's signals are sent to your brain and your brain signals are sent to your body? And vice versa, just approximately, just write in the chat. 50-50. Kelly says 80 body to brain, 20 brain to body, which is spot on. Scott got it close. Yeah, from the research, the estimates are that 80% goes from our bodies to our brain and 20% goes from our brain to our body. And the research is kind of pointing to the brain being like this logistics warehouse. So the interesting thing about this is that if we're trying to influence our body through our thoughts and things we're doing, we're kind of fighting an uphill battle. It's easier to start with the body to influence the brain and the thoughts and emotions. So what we can do is take control of our breathing pattern. And by changing the way that we breathe, using some of these breathing practices that we'll be showing you in a moment, those clusters of nerves in the brainstem, they overhear it, and they start to signal to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which then in turn activates glands and the endocrine system, which then leads to calmer thoughts and feelings arising, which amplify the relaxation breath, and you have this kind of virtuous cycle occurring. And later on in the session, we're going to practice a couple of these breathings. But for now, I'm going to hand the mic back over to Conni. And by the way, if you have any questions about any of this, just write in the chat as we go, and then Conni and I will come to answer them at the end.
Yeah, we'll definitely do an extended Q&A at the end. So definitely hang around. A lot of the good stuff usually happens during the Q&A sessions, because the thing is, there's so much that we can share with you all about the breath, but doing this in an hour, it really only is a very limited amount of time to sort of introduce you to the world of the breath and breath work. All right, now let me keep going. Can you all see my, yeah, good stuff. Cool, so let's talk about the fundamentals of breathing. And our lungs, they're not actually a muscle. We need muscles to breathe. And there's 3 main muscle groups. But the most important one is our diaphragm. And I love this little animation here. So you see that the diaphragm is this sort of parachute or jellyfish-like muscle at the bottom below our lungs that contracts down when we inhale, and it relaxes up when we exhale, okay? Again, when we inhale, it contracts down, and when we exhale, it relaxes up. I'll show this again, this little animation. It helps to just look at this a lot to understand how, a lot of our organs are above our diaphragm, and then a lot of our digestive tract and intestines and whatnot are south of our diaphragm, basically. And you can actually dig your fingers into under your lower ribs and kind of feel it. And for a lot of us, it's really tight. But for some of us, it might actually be a little bit painful because it's so tight, because we're not actually breathing diaphragmatically very much in our daily lives. Now, the cool thing about the diaphragm is that it's connected to our vagus nerve, which is why belly breathing has such a relaxing and calming effect on us, right? A second muscle group that helps us to breathe are intercostal muscles. So they're the muscles in between our ribs. They also help us breathe. And then we have our accessory muscles. They're the ones on our chest, around our neck, our back. They also help us breathe. And a lot of times we use them a little bit too much because a lot of us do a lot of chest breathing. So if you were to exhale now and hold your breath, which is what we did earlier with our CO2 tolerance test, after a while, you start to feel a hunger for breath, right? And this is actually not a lack of oxygen, this breath hunger, which is what a lot of people think, but it has to do with the buildup of CO2. Maybe some of your scuba divers, or maybe you've done a free diving course or something, you learn that in those courses. So this hunger for breath is not a lack of oxygen. It has to do with the buildup of CO2, which then triggers the brain, CO2 levels are rising, you better take a breath now, okay? And we can actually use an oximeter, which I have right here, for example, where you can put your finger in, right? And it measures oxygen blood saturation and my pulse and stuff like that. And if I was to do some breath holding right now, it usually always stays between 95% and 99% oxygen blood saturation. It barely changes. Like mine is usually around, like right now it's 97%, but it's usually always the same every day, unless I do some really long and strong breath hold practices is when it might go a bit lower. But all I'm trying to say is that when we feel this need to breathe, it doesn't really have to do with not enough oxygen in our blood. Now, the role of oxygen is that, yeah, it's, as we all know, it's essential for every cell in our bodies, and it feeds our brains, it cleanses our bodies, and it contracts muscles. And a lot of people don't know the role of CO2, of carbon dioxide, very much. What a lot of us do know is that it eliminates waste from our bodies. And what a lot of people don't know is that it's what's called a vasodilator, meaning it dilates our veins in our bodies. It's also a bronchodilator, meaning, big words, I know, but easy to translate, means that they dilate, it dilates and widens our breathing passageways. Now, what does that mean? Both of this in combination, dilating our veins, widening our breathing passageways, it means that the CO2 helps our heart rate to slow down. And thus, it actually has a relaxing effect. The more CO2 we have in our bodies, the more heart rates slow down, okay? And also, another thing that a lot of people don't know is that CO2 increases the absorption of oxygen into the blood. Okay, we need CO2, and the more CO2 we actually have, the more tolerant we are to CO2. Now, this is where a test comes in from earlier. The more we can actually absorb oxygen into our blood. Now, the problem here is that most people are overbreathers. It means they get rid of too much CO2. And probably the majority of everybody here in our group today probably overbreathe, and I used to as well. And a lot of us also breathe the wrong way, right? A lot of us breathe too fast. We breathe into our chest too much, not enough into our bellies. And a lot of us use our mouth to breathe way too much as well, especially during exercise or even just going for a walk. And so all of this in combination can cause all sorts of mental and physical health issues, and especially chronic health problems and whatnot. Now, the goal with all of this, with CO2 and oxygen, is a balance. That's what we want, because oxygen's great, we all know this, but CO2, carbon dioxide, is also really good and is super important. And so breath work, here's where breath work comes in. Breath work is mostly about manipulating CO2 levels in the body to change our nervous system state. And if you like, you can write this down, because this is really what breath work is all about. Breathwork is mostly about manipulating CO2 levels in the body to change our nervous system state. All right, now, you might wonder, well, Conni, what is the right way to breathe? Well, the right way to breathe depends on the situation and on what you're doing. Your breathing will be different when you're running for a bus versus you're sitting stationary reading a book on your couch, right? If you think about it. Your breathing rate is going to be a lot higher when you're out there running, catching a bus, than when you're chilling out on the couch, drinking a cup of tea. And that's the beauty of our breath. It responds to the demands that are thrown at us, right? That's why it's so fascinating. It adjusts. So the more important question to begin with is, what's your natural resting breath? And we did that in the beginning, when Jonny was kind of guiding into a little breath awareness meditation. And so there are three main components to healthy functional breathing. Number one is nose breathing. Nose is for breathing, mouth is for eating, period. At best, we always breathe through the nose unless we're doing heavy exercise, like really heavy exercise. Generally, when you need to mouth breathe while you're running or cycling or swimming or whatever, oh no, actually not swimming, that's a very different kind of sport to do, but let's say you're running or cycling, then if you need to mouth breathe, that's actually a sign for you to slow down. And so nose breathing generally prevents overbreathing in the first place. This is really important. This is where you'd need to start. Now, why the nose? Well, number one, it takes care of air temperature control. It humidifies the air that comes in. It purifies the air. It has a lot of awesome filters going on there, way more than the mouth, right? It also triggers neuroreceptors in our nose and sinuses that signal that we're safe, we're cool, we're calm, we're collected. It's chill. Nose breathing signals to our brain, we're chill, we're good. It adds nitric oxide to the breath. And maybe you've heard of this, but it's a relaxing gas that's produced by our bodies, especially here in our nasal cavities. Nasal breathing also impacts jaw and palate development in children. It's so important if you have children and you see them breathing through the mouth a lot, to take care of that. It's really important because it has a lot of intense effects, especially when children grow up breathing through the mouth a lot. And lastly, it really affects the quality and quantity of your sleep, which is why I started mouth taping at night, me and my partner, because it really helps to keep your mouth shut at night, especially when you're snoring or when you have sleep apnea, any of that stuff. It's really important to take care of that. We want to be nose breathing as much as possible. Now, number two is breathing low. And by that, I mean belly breathing, as we did earlier, diaphragmatic breathing. It stimulates our vagus nerve. It sends a calming message to our brain and our nervous system. And the air also reaches deeper parts of the lungs when we breathe into our bellies, which is where air is most efficiently absorbed. This is also really important. Compared to when we're shallow breathing, when we talk about shallow breathing, we talk about chest breathing, which is not very efficient breathing at all. And then lastly, we want to breathe slow. According to research, the ideal breathing rate is 5.5 breaths per minute, which is much lower than most people's breathing rate. Probably right now, most of us are breathing anywhere between 12 and 20, maybe even more breaths per minute. Yeah. So that's why practicing something like coherence breathing, like we did in the very beginning when I was guiding you through a little meditation, where we breathe in for 4 and breathe out for 4, or you can do it with 5 or 6 or 7. Extending your exhales or doing controlled breath holds, all of that really trains your CO2 tolerance, because the higher your CO2 tolerance, so the longer that you can hold your breath, with the exercise that we did at the very beginning, the breath test, after an exhale, the more stress resilient you are, and the more your parasympathetic nervous system is in a healthy state. And so if your test result was below 25 seconds, your CO2 tolerance is quite low, what that means. And doing a daily breathwork practice can really, really help you to improve, all sorts of things, your energy levels, your focus, also maybe any sort of chronic health issues that you might have. And just, I guess the goal would be to get up to 30 to 35, and maybe in best case scenario, even up to 40. But anything below 25 needs a bit of improvement, which we can do with a daily breathwork practice. And so the invitation here is also to check in with your breathing regularly. A few times a day, just pause what you're doing for a second, become present, see how your breath is doing, and then adjust accordingly. Are you breathing through the nose? Are you breathing into your belly? Are you breathing slow? Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's when we talk about breath work, many people talk about different things. There's a good framework by Dr. Ila Manga, The Art of Breath Work. And it kind of categorizes breathwork and the different kinds and types and methods. And the A stands for awareness of the breath. So that is when, in meditation or when we're doing mindfulness practices, we're just watching our breath. We're not actually interfering or changing the breath or controlling the breath, really just connecting to it, watching it, observing it. Regulation of the breath, the R in art. Breath regulation, it's all about changing our state by changing our breathing pattern, which is, we did the coherence breathing. We're going to do a couple more exercises in a bit. But it's really all about breathing practices that are informed by modern science, but that are also rooted in, ancient techniques and pranayama and whatnot, to provide a safe and practical sort of way to practice. And that really, a lot of those, they deliver immediate results. That's why breathwork is so powerful. So any sort of box breathing, coherence breathing, 4-7-8 breathing, breath of fire, all that sort of stuff that you can do just for a few minutes here and there every day. And then we have the T, transformational breathwork, which is mainly a technique called conscious connected breathing, but there's a few other techniques as well. But Jonny and I, for example, we both teach conscious connected breathing. They're usually longer sessions, maybe 45 minutes, 60 minutes, up, 90 minutes, even longer. Holotropic, they go up to like 3 hours breathing session where you breathe through the mouth, in and out to music set. And it puts you into an altered state of consciousness, which helps with emotional processing, helps to access the subconscious part of our minds, helps with trauma healing, that sort of stuff. So that is breathwork. When we talk about breathwork, we can talk about a lot of different things. And then lastly, and we just did earlier on, we did a water practice, which is a balancing practice. But essentially, there is 3 categories of breath regulation practices, the R in art. And you can kind of, I guess, look at the breath as a remote control, right? So it can serve as a brake pedal, but also as a gas pedal. And so we did a water practice in the beginning, coherence breathing, which is kind of like a 1-on-1 ratio. Like we did 4 in and 4 out. You can do 5 or 6, whatever. And the aim is approximately 4 to 6 breaths per minute. It's also best combined with diaphragmatic breathing, balances our nervous system. So when you're up and stressed, it brings you down. When you're down, it brings you up. You can do this at any time during the day. It's awesome. You do this for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It always does the job. With sun practices, they're energizing, they're upregulating, they stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. They're usually 30 or more breaths per minute. They actually reduce carbon dioxide because when we breathe a lot and when we breathe fast, we release a lot of CO2, which constricts blood vessels and our breathing passageways, which is why when people do a lot of Wim Hof breathing, which is the very fast breathing, you might feel lightheaded or dizzy. That's why that happens. And they're mainly done, early in the mornings to get your day started. Instead of a coffee, you can do some breath of fire, or maybe before exercise to get going. And then lastly, there's the moon practices. They're down-regulating, they're relaxing, they're calming, they activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Usually, there are 3 or less breaths per minute. So for example, when we do box breathing, that would be a moon practice. It's 5 in, you hold for 5, you've exhaled for 5, and then you hold again for 5. Now that's 20 seconds for 1 breath. You do 3 of those per minute, right? So that's why it's a moon practice. It's also really good to do with diaphragmatic breathing in the evening or when really stressed and anxious. Alrighty, now this was that. Here we go. Alrighty, there might probably be a few questions at this point. But I think we're just gonna dive right into.
Yeah, let's do that. Conni, we've got another 10 minutes left. So let's just do a couple of breathing exercises and then we'll maybe have 4 or 5 minutes for Q&A at the end.
Sweet. Sounds good. All right, let's do a round of a sun practice. which is an energizing breath. And then we're going to do a moon practice that Jonny's going to lead. Yeah, so it activates our sympathetic nervous system. And we are going to do a 3-part breath, which means it's in and out through the nose, but we first inhale into the belly, then into the chest, and then out. So it's kind of like so it's quite rapid, into the belly, into the chest, and then out. And we'll probably do about 20 to 30 rounds just one time. And you'll see how that makes you feel afterwards. So to get started, just take a comfortable seated position. Your back is straight, shoulders are relaxed, jaw is relaxed, and you close your eyes. Chin is parallel to the floor. And then let's begin. In, out, in, out, in, out. Keeping it going, keeping it flowing. Belly, chest, exhale. Belly, chest, exhale. Belly, chest, exhale. In and out, in and out. Keeping it going. And then after your next exhale, you can take a deep breath in, hold at the top, and then breathe out the mouth, and hold at the bottom. And then let the breath go back to normal, relaxed, and coming back to our Zoom room. All right.
Okay.
So that was a sun practice. It's energizing. You're probably feeling it a little bit. And now you'll see the difference to a moon practice with Jonny.
Yeah, and just to briefly answer Joanna's question, you don't have to reach full lung capacity, but just as much as is comfortable. Okay, in our last, we have 6 minutes left. So I'm going to guide you through a moon practice. This is also known in the freediving world as triangular breathing. And the important thing to note is that the inhale is half as long as the exhale. So we're going to be doing inhaling for 3, holding for a count of 3, and then exhaling for a count of 6. So the exhale is twice as long as the inhale. And if you want to do this in your own time, this can also be 4, 4, 8, or even 5, 5, 10. But we're just going to do 3, 3, 6 for today. So again, make sure you're sitting comfortably. Relax your shoulders a little bit. And let out an exhale. And now inhaling through your nose for a count of 3, 2, 3. Holding at the top. 2, 3. And exhaling through the nose. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhaling for 3, 2, 3. Hold. 2, 3. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll do one more. Inhale. 2, 3. Hold. 2, 3. And exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let go of the breath. And I'd just like you to notice if you feel any different after that. And sometimes doing 10, 15, even up to 20 rounds, you really start to feel the difference. And if you're wearing a heart rate monitor, you can actually see your heart rate drop in real time as you're doing this exercise. It's really cool. Conni? Okay. So that is the end of our workshop. we'll stay on for some questions afterwards, but we also wanted to share with you guys that Connie and I are going to be doing another 30 days of breathwork challenge, starting in mid-February. So I'll just I'll share a link here in the chat so you guys can get a sense of what we'll be up to. Connie, do you want to talk a little bit about what we'll be doing? Oh, Connie's disappeared. Okay, so it's essentially we're going to be asking you to commit to 5 minutes of breath work every single day for 30 days with this community of committed breathers. There'll be weekly themed live sessions with pre-recorded guided audios, and you'll also have accountability buddies. So we'll be pairing you with someone else in the group. There'll be shared resources, Spotify playlists, and we'll be diving into more of the kind of specific breathwork practices. There are practices like the bee breath, the breath of fire, alternate nostril breathing is really helpful for before meditation, and some other practices that we'll have a lot more time to share. Connie, now that you're back, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the internet at home. I had to switch to my phone. So I kind of missed a minute or so of what you were sharing, but I guess you're talking about our 30 days of breath work that we're starting in just a couple of weeks or so. And did you share the link? Yeah. So
I did, yeah.
That'll be, yeah, it's going to be really exciting. We did the meditation challenge last year, and now we're doing a breathwork one. And so, yeah, we feel like doing something every day for at least 30 days. I mean, that's just a start, but to actually turn it into lifelong practice is really powerful. And breathwork's changed our lives like crazy in so many ways. And so, yeah, if you're into that, then come and hang. We'll dive much deeper into all the different ways that we can use breath work, especially if you're struggling with anxiety, sleep issues, digestive issues, chronic issues, any sort of, anything like that, which is usually rooted also in a unbalanced nervous system, then breath work can totally help. And yeah, so that's what I have to say about that. I know that I think our Zoom meeting is going to end in a little bit. But if there are any questions, then don't hesitate to reach out on Instagram or through email, and I'm happy to respond to any concern or question you might have.
Likewise, thank you so much for bearing with us. We'll be sharing the 2 recordings of this session afterwards by email as well. And please do reach out if you have any questions or if anything came up. Both Connie and I would love to hear from you. So yeah, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. And if you want to unmute as you before
Thanks
you
so much for joining, everybody.
Say goodbye just before we get kicked out.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Keep breathing.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Try to send,
You.